Hello friends, today we will be discussing an important, again another important bacteria, that is Vibrio cholerae. So we'll be discussing an important bacteria, that is Vibrio cholerae. Discussing about this bacteria, basically it is a gram-negative flagellated. It's a gram-negative flagellated. Why it's called Vibrio? Because it's comma shaped. Okay. If you watch its image, I don't have an image here, but you will be appreciating it as a comma shaped flagellated. Okay. If it is gram negative, I remember it as ox positive. Gram negative, then oxidase should be positive. Yeah. Right. And basically it belongs, if you see the Vibrio, it has a classification. Okay. There are many classifications for Vibrio. One classification was given by Gardner. So Gardner's classification of this Vibrio is based on salt requirement. Based on salt requirement. Salt requirement. Okay. Now he classified them into non-halophilic on the basis of salt requirement. He classified them on the basis of non-halophilic Vibrios. Non-halophilic Vibrios and halophilic Vibrios. Halophilic Vibrios. He said this is for the classification of Vibrio. Okay, remember. So Vibrio is being now classified. Then we will go into Vibrio cholerae. Okay, this is the diagram. Very nice. Okay, this is the comma shape diagram which they have sent. Okay, this non-halophilic Vibrios are those Vibrios which are non-halophilic. What is non-halophilic? Non-halophilic, that is, if you increase the concentration of salt, they won't grow. Sir, how to remember? Where there is salt, higher quantity, non-halophilic. How we will understand? So they can't grow in high salt concentration. And the example is that which you know, Vibrio cholerae. And Vibrio, another I remember is Vibrio mimicus. Cholerae Vibrio mimicus. Halophilic Vibrio are those that they will need only salt. Salt is a requirement. Let us say like this. Salt is a requirement. Which requirement? Relative or absolute? Absolute. This point will be asked in the exam. Absolute requirement. Absolute requirement is salt. So salt connected to this, you can understand. Are we able to understand? Are we sleeping? Or we are cute? Guys, are we sleeping or we are cute? Okay. So salt is a requirement. Okay. Salt is a requirement. Why I'm repeating again and again? Because you won't forget it. That's how I learn also at home. Salt is a requirement. Absolute requirement. And your head should also rotate. That means your brain is getting the information. Okay. Like I am teaching you, my hands are moving. Because I am retaining that information, how to tell you that thing. So That means where there is salt, they will grow. No salt, can't grow. And if you increase, so what will happen if we increase the salt concentration? If we increase the salt concentration, what will happen to these bacteria? Can tolerate. Can tolerate. Okay. So which organisms are there? Which organisms are there? Examples will include Vibrio parahemolyticus. Vibrio parahemolyticus. Vibrio parahemolyticus. Vibrio alginolyticus. Vibrio alginolyticus. Vibrio vulvinificus. Vibrio vulvinificus. I hope you won't forget them. Parahemolyticus, alginolyticus, vulvinificus. Vulvinificus. Okay. These are all the halophilic vibrios. Halophilic vibrios. Fine. Now he took, there was another grouping done for this. Now this Vibrio cholerae, if I take this Vibrio cholerae, it is having further classified. Now this is further classified. Who? This non-halophilic Vibrio cholerae is further classified on the basis of three things. What? Three things. Guys, how much? Three things. Okay. So this Vibrio cholerae, which we'll be studying, it is classified on the basis of three things. One is serogrouping. Serogrouping. Serotyping. Serotyping. And biotyping. Biotyping. Okay. Serogrouping means I am taking the somatic O antigen of this bacteria. Somatic O antigen. I take the somatic O antigen of this bacteria. Fine. Okay. Which is present on the LPS. Lipopolysaccharide. Lipopolysaccharide LPS. Okay. How many groups you are doing this? In how many groups you are dividing it into? 200 serogroups. 200 serogroups. You can also say serovars. Okay. Serogroups or serovars. Fine. Serogroups are serovars. So there is a question now. Which serogroup will be was responsible for causing? First, let me first write all the things about them. Okay, then we will mention them separately. Serotyping is I take the O1 serogroup from this O1 serogroup, and I classify this O1 serogroup into three: Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. What? Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Hikojima. Fine. Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Okay. Am I audible? We'll try to make it easy. You know, books. I've tried to make it easy. Okay. So Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Hikojima. Okay. And then biotyping, they are taking serogroup O1. They are taking serogroup O1, the same serogroup, and then has two biotypes. Okay. We write like this. Let us write like this. So we are taking the O1, and then we are seeing two biotypes? Who can tell us two biotypes? Two biotypes of Vibrio. Anyone? No, sir. Why you should know this concept? It is so easy. So don't you know classical EI? You don't know. So classical biotype and EI. EI TOR we say. EI TOR variant. Okay. So this is just a basic introduction. Giving you the outline. Okay. Now I go individually to them. Let us write like this: 200 serogroups. They are going to serovars, and who they will ask you a question: who was responsible for the pandemic? Like you have what COVID-19 right now for the coronavirus pandemic. Same the epidemic and the pandemic. Which serogroup will be responsible if a pandemic of Vibrio cholerae happens? Exactly. Yeah. So which pandemic will happen? Which variant will be responsible? It is the O1. So O1 serogroup will be responsible if there is outbreak of pandemic of Vibrio cholerae, cholera pandemic. It will be O1 serogroup. So all pandemics. And even if epidemics happen, I hope you remember the differences between epidemics, pandemic, isn't it? I have taught you in the beginning. So epidemic, if there is any epidemic, it will be also this group. Okay. Next serogroup is that NAG Vibrio. NAG Vibrio, or we call it non-agglutinable Vibrio or non-cholera. Non-cholera Vibrio. Okay. These are those Vibrios which are non-O1 serogroups. Non-O1 serogroups. Non-O1 serogroups. Okay. Now, sometimes back in the Bangladesh, I think in the 90s, there was an epidemic. There was an outbreak of cholera, and the group responsible was O139, Bangladesh, and even in India. Okay, it was O39. Okay, and if you see non-O139 or non-O1, they have caused sporadic outbreaks. Sporadic outbreaks of what? Diarrhea and extra-intestinal manifestations. Means more than the intestinal involvement is there. Okay, not only intestinal involvement is. So this is what you have to remember. Okay, one liner. Okay, is there any doubt in this table? Simple. If you want to attribute something, you should say O1 serogroup. But in in the history, O139, Bangladesh, India, these South Asian countries, they were having this. Yeah. Serotyping. Let us go to the serotyping. Serotyping, we said it is Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. Okay. On the basis of what we have done it, on the basis of what we are classifying them, we are seeing those small differences of O antigen. Okay. Let us write one line about them. Let me take I like this, right? Like this, I, O, H. So you know, Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima. So Inaba, what is special about? Let me write first about Ogawa. What is Ogawa? Ogawa is the most common serotype. Ogawa is the most common serotype. Okay. Ogawa is the most common serotype. What will be the next common? Next common will be Inaba. What? Inaba. The same name is familiar with our classroom student Fabina, isn't it? So Ogawa, Inaba, and Hikojima and Hikojima, isn't it? So Inaba, Ogawa, Hikojima, making you to remember by something so that I'm making these jokes. Okay. So it is the classmate, your classmate, Fabina, Inaba. So she should be also put in a new strain. Fabina, Ogawa, Hikojima, isn't it? Keep enjoying speaking like that. Inaba, Ogawa, Fabina. So this is yeah, otherwise you will remember something else. Okay, come back to studies. Come back to studies. Don't go into depth. Okay, yeah. So Ogawa is the most common serotype. Okay, so this is second most common. So followed by Inaba. Where did you find them? Clinical sample. If you take any clinical sample, you will be seeing the most common serotype will be Ogawa. Okay. Now listen to my word. Once any epidemic happens, listen to my word, guys. Once any epidemic happens, first, what did I tell you? What is the most common serotype found from the clinical sample? It is Ogawa, then Inaba. But when epidemic happens, this changes. Inaba will be the most common. Ogawa will be the, so there is a shift. So in epidemics, this will become the most common. In epidemics, this will become the most common. Are we able to understand? This is also easy. Then we go to, no, Hikojima, not Fabina. So we go to Hikojima. Hikojima. Okay. Hikojima means, remember, whenever you have Hikojima, did we know that in the leprosy we had a borderline? Borderline leprosy where we were going for tuberculoid and lepromatous. Remember, same thing. Understand that this H state, this Hikojima state, is that unstable state where you have expression of both the antigens. You have Inaba also, you have Ogawa also. You have Inaba also, you have Ogawa. Okay, fine. This is what you have to remember. Going to the biotyping. Biotyping, I told you, we have to differentiate them on the basis of what? On the basis of what we will differentiate them? On the basis of biochemical reactions. Where are the other students in the class? Biochemical reactions. We'll differentiate them on the basis of biochemical reactions. Okay. So now this classical biotype, when we had the 6 pandemics of cholera, remember, 6 pandemics of cholera, this classical biotype was responsible. 6 pandemics of cholera, this classical biotype was responsible. Okay. Now let me tell you something about EI-TOR variants. Okay, EI-TOR. Mostly in the Asia, Africa. Okay, they have seen this. Okay, and it has been seen that EI-TOR variants shows us some same features of classical biotypes. Okay, so which of them will show? There are 2. One is Matlab, one is Mozambique. Because they are showing mixed property, classical property also, EI property also, classical property also, EI property also. That's why we have to remember 2 strains. One is Matlab strain. So Matlab strain. Another is Mozambique variant. These 2, if you are not able, now you tell me, could you biotype them if you have a mixture of properties? Could you biotype them if you have mixture of properties? No, we can't biotype. Very nice. So that's why they could not biotype, because they had mixture. So they have mixed properties of what? Classical and EI-TOR. Classical and EI-TOR. Okay. So this Mozambique was showing a different thing. Mozambique was doing one thing. It was phenotypically showing something. What is phenotype? No, physical property something. And genome was for EI-TOR. So phenotypic property was there, but genotype was EI-TOR. So that's why we have put it under these mixed overlapping properties. So genotype it was showing for EI. Okay. So remember an exception here, cholera toxin, and the gene for this toxin, that is CTX. These are both of classical type. These are both of classical type. Okay. Is there any doubt? Inukawa, Inaba, Kojima. Okay. So this EI-TOR, Hajj. Remember EI-TOR for Hajj. So in the Muslim pilgrimage, EI-TOR. Okay. So remember Hajj for this. Okay. And this EI-TOR is also called seventh pandemic. Seventh pandemic caused by EI-TOR. Seventh pandemic. See, 6 pandemics by classical. How to remember? 6 pandemics have been caused by classical strain. Seventh pandemic. EI-TOR. Okay, where did you miss? Okay, clear now? Okay. Can you see? Okay. Done? Okay. Now let us go to the, let us talk something about the pathophysiology. Okay. Let's go into the pathophysiology of this disease. So how does cholera, what does cholera do? Okay. Let us talk about the pathogenesis. This was all about the epidemiology. So pathogenesis. Number 1. Is cholera producing a toxin? Yes, sir. It is producing toxin. Okay. O1 strain, O139, both can produce cholera toxin. CT, I will write simply CT, okay, cholera toxin. And will cause dash cholera. Okay. Mode of transmission. Mode of transmission is, what is the mode of transmission? Contaminated water or food. Contaminated water or food ingestion. Contaminated water or food ingestion, okay. How much infective dose required to cause the disease? How much infective dose required to cause a disease? Okay. See, when you are eating this, when the person eats it, okay, this is the oral cavity, okay. The person has taken this inside, it will go into the GIT. Here GIT, you have more amounts of acid. So acid will kill this. So it is acid labile. This toxin is acid labile. So you will be needing a very high dose, that is 10 to the power 8 bacilli. 10 to the power 8 bacilli are required to produce an infection so that it can bypass this and reach the intestine, which I will be teaching you where it is causing the binding to the intestinal epithelium, because it is causing the disease in the intestinal epithelium. So it has to reach at this point. This point it has to reach. Okay. And now if you are giving some person any antacid, will you increase the chance? Because antacid will neutralize this acid and bacilli will not be killed. So bacilli will go into the intestine. So are you increasing the risk for this? If you give any proton pump inhibitor, that is omeprazole, You give an omeprazole, proton pump inhibitor. Will it cause? Will you, if you are giving ranitidine, if you are giving H2 antihistamines, okay, they will also cause this. Or if there is a disease in a patient, that disease is called hypochlorhydria. So he has a decreased production of HCl due to any cause, genetic or something. So he will be at a higher, he will be a risk as a factor. Fine. Is there any doubt? Okay, let us talk about this CT toxin again. What is the method by which it is causing this? See, CT toxin, when it reaches this region, where are the other students? Other students are sleeping. So everyone should reply to me so that I can be happy that you are with me. Only these much students are there. Okay. So, okay. So see, let me say about CT. Let me talk about the CT. So CT has to reach where? What is the site it has to reach? CT has to reach where? Intestine. It has to start infection in the intestine. Yeah. So what this CT does, it has to reach the small intestine, and there it has to literally penetrate that mucus layer. So it should have a very nice motility. It should have a nice enzyme to kill that mucin. It should have a heme agglutinin protease. So what it has first? So cholera is having what? This Vibrio is having, number one, active motility. Number two, mucinase. Number three, heme agglutinin protease. It is also called as cholera lectin. Okay. Okay, friends. Fine. So these are the things which it needs to start the pathology. Starts the pathology. Okay. So it has to also attach to the epithelium. For example, this is the intestine. It should attach to this epithelium. So it should have a glue. The glue is called TCP. How does a cholera attach here? TCP. Let me write the glue. TCP. What is TCP? TCP means toxin co-regulated pilus. Toxin co-regulated pilus. Toxin co-regulated pilus. This toxin co-regulated pilus is basically a, can you say, fimbriae by which it is attaching to the intestinal epithelium. So this will actually help him. I can say it will help him to attach to that epithelium. Okay. Now let us talk about the toxin which it releases. Okay. Let us talk about the cholera toxin. So cholera toxin, please, here, my dears, don't look from the window. Don't search for anyone. they won't help you. Look at me in the class. Look at me in the class, in the class, isn't it? No? So cholera toxin is basically made up of two fragments. It's made up of two fragments. Always write CT is equal to A plus B whenever you forget anything. A plus B is equal to CT. A plus B is equal to CT, not CT scan. A plus B is equal to cholera toxin. It is called CT. There is a way to understand, make yourself understand. Then you can know orientation is important. It has two fragments. These are peptide in nature. These are two peptide fragments. Two peptide fragments. B means B for no, not B for ball. B for means binding. B means binding. Why did I use this? B for binding. B for binding. Okay. Binding fragment. A for apple. A for apple. C for ball. C for cat. This is not that. This is A for active. A for active. What is the molecular weight of this? Can anyone tell me? Anyone loving to treat his patient? 27 kilodalton. By the way, no need to write. No need to write. So this is an active. This is a binding fragment. Okay. Binding means this fragment will help this toxin to bind. And where does it bind? There is a receptor on the intestinal epithelium. Let me make an intestinal epithelium. There is a receptor here. This receptor is known as GM1 gangliocytes. GM1 gangliocyte receptor. So once these AB fragments are coming together, they are moving, B will bind to this. So if I have two fragments like this in a tray, A fragment and B fragment, what will B do? B will attach. B will attach to GM1 gangliocyte. A will do a process that is called, please remember, A will cause, it is an active, so it will start doing any chemical reaction. What it will do? It will cause ADP ribosylation. ADP ribosylation of G protein. G protein. Do we know the G protein? Do we know the G protein? Okay. This will finally, let me write it like this. Let me take a sparkle pen for your clothes. Okay. Sparkle pen for your clothes. Okay. Let us take this A fragment. So what it does is this A factor, it binds to, A factor is not binding basically. This A fragment is causing, once B is letting it to bind, now A fragment will start doing the work. A factor will start doing the work. This A factor will cause ADP ribosylation. ADP ribosylation of what? G protein I taught you yesterday. This the messenger. So G protein, that intracellular mechanism, no, at intracellular fragment, okay, of that receptor. G protein is that intracellular fragment of that receptor present inside the cell. So once you do ADP ribosylation of this, you will cause increased activity of or upregulation of adenylyl cyclase. Adenylate cyclase, which will lead to increased CAMP. What now? This increased CAMP is causing a problem. What it will cause? Intestinal lumen. When you increase this CAMP, in the lumen, this is the lumen of the intestine. Where you have the food and stools and everything. what will happen? It will cause increase the concentration of sodium chloride in this. Sodium chloride concentration will get increased. Sodium chloride concentration will get increased in the lumen because of this CAMP increase. CAMP has increased. This has led to the increased sodium chloride, but where? Lumen of the intestine. Lumen of the intestine. Okay, lumen of the intestine. Right? Who will follow sodium chloride? Who will form sodium? Who will follow sodium chloride? Water. Water will follow sodium chloride. Water. So water will come out. Water. So this will lead to isotonic fluid accumulation. So there will be isotonic fluid in the lumen. In the lumen, isn't it? Isotonic fluid. This isotonic fluid accumulation will lead to watery diarrhea. Watery diarrhea. So will you lose all the fluid from the body? Will you lose all the electrolytes from your body? Will you lose all the fluids from the body, all the electrolytes from your body? Will it lead to decreased extracellular volume? Will it lead to the less blood volume? Will the water component of the blood decrease? Will it lead to shock? Will it lead to shock? Very nice answer. And have you also lost the bicarbonates in it? Yes, sir. We have lost the bicarbonates in it. Will you lead to metabolic acidosis? Will you have acidosis? So you will have acidosis. You will have acidosis. Let me write in short acidosis. Will lead to acidosis because it's lost in the human. So you have two things, acidosis and shock. I hope you understand why shock happened, why acidosis happened. What is shock? Shock is a state of intense hypoperfusion. Hypoperfusion state means your tissues are not receiving the proper amount of fluid or blood. Very nice. So will lead to shock. You have to treat this patient, otherwise the patient will die of shock and acidosis. Is it clear, friends? Okay. So you have more amount of bicarbonate secretion, more amount of chloride secretion in the lumen. Okay. This will lead to, due to the hypersecretion, this will lead to shock and this. Okay. You know how much fluid is lost per day? Okay, first one thing, once the person is eating, cholera will abruptly come. You know what will happen? This cholera will have an abrupt onset. There will be intense vomiting and diarrhea. Intense vomiting and diarrhea. Okay. And do you know how much fluid is lost? Copious fluid loss. How much? A person loses around 20 liters of fluid per day. Oh my God. Okay. Are we clear? 15 to 20 liters per day. So copious amount. 15 to 20 liters per day. Okay. There will be what will be the nature of the stools? What will be the nature of the stools? What will be the nature of the stool? We call it dash. There is a hit name for this. We have a hit name for this. Rice watery diarrhea. We say rice watery. Rice watery stools. Is it an inflammatory diarrhea? No, it's a non-inflammatory diarrhea. It's a non-inflammatory diarrhea. Okay, if you take also that in the, You can check in the internet. There will be some rice watery, as if rice water. So that color stool will be there. Okay. So what will be the lab diagnosis? Let us first write the clinical features of the patient. So write it under the heading of clinical features. So we have watery diarrhea. Okay. But the patient will it be painful or painless? It will be painless. It will be painless. Okay. So if they tell you what is rice watery stool, I ask you a question. What is rice watery stool? Define. If you are a doctor, I tell you what is rice watery stool. What you will start saying? You will say it is that stool which when rice is put in the water and water gets rice in color, that becomes the rice watery stool. Let's write the definition question. What is rice watery stool? Please write. What is rice watery stool? Please write the definition answer. Rice watery stool is a non-bilious. There is no bile in it. Non-bilious, cloudy, gray, and watery stool with mucus flakes. Mucus flakes. No blood, no pus cells. With fishy or offensive odor. Inoffensive. Not offensive. Inoffensive odor. This is the definition of how to describe a rice watery stool. Non-bilious, cloudy, grey and watery, with mucus flakes, no blood, no pus cells, with fishy smell, and inoffensive odor. That is the definition of watery diarrhea, rice water stools. Okay. What about the fever? Will there be fever? Usually absent. Usually absent. Okay. Now let us write how much fluid will be lost and what will happen. Okay. Let us write that way so that you can understand the clinical picture. Okay. See, if you have 5%, if there is less than 5% of fluid loss, if there is less than 5% of fluid loss, the patient will be having increased thirst. So by his thirst, you can take the value that he is having less than 5%. If it is 5 to 10%, if it is 5 to 10%, he will be having postural hypotension, weakness, tachycardia, and turgor, decreased skin turgor. And I have taught this already, I hope, isn't it? There is decreased skin turgor. Have I taught it in the dehydration part of physiology? I have dealt, at least I think I took that chapter for 15 days or 20 days, I think. I've taught it in great detail, isn't it? Yeah. So I think past before some 6 months, I think, isn't it? Yeah. So if it is greater than 10%, if it is greater than 10%, the patient will show renal failure. Why? Because of RTA. What is RTA? Not road traffic accident, renal tubular acidosis. Renal tubular acidosis. Okay. What will happen? What will be the features of these? He will be having oliguria. What is oliguria? He will be having decreased urine output. Decreased urine output. Second, sunken eyes, absent pulses, not rice, wheat, nothing. It's pulse, okay? Absent pulses. Washerwoman skin. Washerwoman skin. Do you know washerwoman? Have you seen the skin of washerwoman? Wrinkled skin. Wrinkled skin. Okay. And he will be having somnolence. Somnolence and coma. What is somnolence? What is somnolence? Somnolence. Somnolence means drowsy feeling. Something that you want to sleep again and again. Okay. So that is somnolence. Is it clear? Any doubt in this? So have you understood the clinical picture? 5% there will be increased thirst. 5 to 10% there will be this. Greater than 10% there will be. Okay, fine, you have understood it. So what is cholera season? Cholera season is, it is that season in which you have maximum transmission. So which season is this? Heavy rainfall and floods. And floods. Okay. And what is the blood group risks? Who can get, with which blood group a person can get is at a higher risk of having a cholera infection? It is O blood group. Right. Okay. AB have least risk. AB least risk, high risk. Is it clear? Let us go to the lab diagnosis. Lab diagnosis. Okay. Lab diagnosis, what do you want to take? Specimen will be the stool, isn't it? So before you start the antibiotics, see, the patient comes to you, you will be starting an empirical therapy, or you will be, at least that, yeah, it is about this. So before going for an antibiotic therapy, please collect this tool. Don't collect this tool after the antibiotics. You won't be able to see anything. Okay. So before starting the antibiotics, you should take this tool. So stool before, collect this tool, write this, collect this tool before starting the antibiotics. Before starting the antibiotics. Are we clear? Antibiotics. You can also take rectal swab. I hope you understand this. Rectal swab, okay? In carrier people. How to know carrier state? How to know carrier state, guys? What is the definition of carrier states? Okay, let us integrate it here, okay? Carrier state. See, there are many things. First is reservoir. Let us first write like this. Let me explain this thing. Make a chart for yourself. Okay. Let us make it easy. So let us make a chart. So in the cholera reservoir, who is the reservoir? Humans are the only reservoir, no animal. Humans. Source of infection can be from cases, asymptomatic cases, or asymptomatic carriers. Who are the carriers? Carriers in this case are healthy people. Healthy people who are putting the bacilli in the feces. They don't know they have cholera infection, but they are discharging this with the stools. Okay, discharging this with the stools. So these carriers can be incubatory carrier. They can be convalescent carrier. They can be contact carrier or healthy carrier. Contact or healthy carrier. Also there is chronic carrier. So they have their own definitions. What is incubating carrier? Incubatory carrier? Yes. Incubatory carrier is, yes, we don't need to worry about this because they are less common. Because cholera is having an incubation of period of 1 to 2 days. You know that. Now convalescent carrier are those patients who have recovered and are shedding the bacilli for 2 to 3 weeks. They have recovered, but still the bacilli are present in the stools. So they are 2 to 3 weeks they are shedding. They are shedding. Can we understand this term? Guys, is it easy or not? They have recovered, but still they are putting the bacilli in the stools. They are known as convalescent carriers. Contact or healthy carriers means they get a subclinical infection. What is subclinical? That is, it's not showing those symptoms. It's not, I am confused whether it's cholera or not. So they will be shedding their bacilli less than 10 days. Their bacilli will be shedding for less than 10 days. So it's a subclinical. So this is clinical in front of me. Okay, let us make you understand like this. Clinical means I have the symptom, pain, this. This is subclinical. Subclinical means it is hidden, not clinically significant. Is it clear? Is it clear, friends? I am trying to make it easy for you because many first year people are here. So trying to give simple examples. Okay. Okay. What is chronic carrier state? Chronic carrier state means those they are becoming from whom? From the convalescent state, we may have some chronic carrier state. Okay. So we should know that V. cholerae can stay in the ice. For 4 to 6 weeks. If you ice them, they can stay in the ice for 4 to 6 weeks. They are stable to refrigeration. Stable to refrigeration. But they are heat labile. Okay, are we clear? This is where we reached from the lab diagnosis. Okay, so from the lab diagnosis, I want to say, so what we were saying, yeah, so stools. Okay, so what is the transport media? I have taught you everything about the transport media. So just here, directly writing, what is the transport media here? Transport media is Venkataraman, Ramakrishnan medium. What medium? Venkataraman, Ramakrishnan medium. What? Venkataraman. What? Venkataraman, Ramakrishnan medium. I have taught you in the previously. That's why I was speaking like that. Venkataraman, Ramakrishnan medium, Carey Blair medium, autoclaved water, alkaline salt transport medium. Taught everything in the general principles. Just have to write only here. That's how it can help us. So Venkataraman, Ramakrishnan, media, that is called VR media. Okay, and Carey Blair media. What was the enrichment media? Peptone water. What was the enrichment media? Enrichment media. Alkaline peptone water. Then there should be a selective media. I have taught you the static media. Yes, tell me selective media, guys. Guys, fast. Selective media is TCBS. Selective media is TCBS. Microbiology is not that subject which you can study on one day and understand that we have understood it. No, it needs frequent revisions. Volatile subject. TCBS. Thiosulfate. Citrate. Bile salt. Sucrose. So color will change to, this sucrose will be getting lysed by it. So that's why the best selective media. So what will happen to sucrose? The color will change from green to yellow, isn't it? Green to yellow. Green to yellow. Okay. Easy. So is it sucrose slices? Is it sucrose slices? Is it sucrolytic, means lighting the sucrose? Then if I give it nitrate, it reduces nitrates to nitrites. So is the nitrate reduction test positive or negative? Nitrate reduction test positive or negative? Nitrate reduction test is positive. Okay. Are you able to understand, guys? So if there is nitrite test positive and indole test also positive, what indole test? We call this as cholera red reaction. Cholera red reaction. If nitrite reduction test is also positive, indole test is also positive, we say together we call them cholera red reaction. Enrichment media, I didn't say. Enrichment media should be alkaline peptone water. Where is that? Yeah, alkaline peptone water. Alkaline peptone water. Let me write in capital: alkaline peptone water. Alkaline peptone water. Alkaline peptone water. Okay. So what is the drug of choice for this? How will you treat this condition? So drug of choice will be, yes, you can tell us. Drug of choice will be macrolide, azithromycin. So drug of choice. Drug of choice is, if it is an adult, you will give macrolides. Okay, azithromycin, erythromycin, and doxycycline. You can write this. Okay, you have now become masters of this. DOC, child. If it's a child, children, cotrimoxazole. Cotrimoxazole. If the female is pregnant and she has got this cholera, then how much? Furazolidone. Furazolidone. Okay, this is what you can remember. And chemoprophylaxis, by the way. Chemoprophylaxis by which drug? Chemoprophylaxis by which drug? Tetracycline. Tetracycline. Okay, are we clear? So I hope you have enjoyed this topic. Keep revising this. Vaccines, I will be taking it in a separate topic. Okay. So this was all about Vibrio cholerae. Okay. So there are other two minor organisms, that is Vibrio vulnificus and Vibrio parahemolyticus. That I will be taking as a small video. Okay, that's not so much. Okay, need some small points to understand. Not so much. So thank you very much for your time and take care. See you all in the next lecture. Bye bye.